Welcome everybody. Today, again, we have an amazing show prepared for you guys. We have leveraging data for marketing advantage in the cannabis industry as our main topic. We are set with three individuals today to give you guys some insight on that. So today, my name is Casey Santana. I am filling in for our friend Adelia. We are proud members of the Cannabis Chamber here in SoCal. The Cannabis Chamber is focused on high industry opportunities, B2B events. You guys can stay updated on our virtual events and our in-person events on the website as well. You could also find ways to participate in the chamber being a member on the website there. On our next slide, we're going to go ahead and introduce our members today for our panel. We have Matt Kurtzman, founder and CEO of Canold. We have Roger Tower, a man who wears many hats, but he is one of the founders and CEOs of Tower Agency. And we have Blake Patterson, CRO of Keefe Brands. And congratulations again on your win at Emerald Cup, Blake. That is.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I would love to take more credit than I deserve. But
hey, that's always exciting. It's a team thing, I always say.
That's right. That's right. I'll take it.
Excited to have you guys. Thank you again for your time. And I think we can get started. We have Matt presenting some analytics and some data information for us. So I'm going to go ahead and let Matt take it on from here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about where we are in the larger cannabis universe these days. And the sign tough times ahead is a signal, right? You know, tough times are now. And there's a graph here. This is Massachusetts average retail price program for flower. And you can see not a great trend here. And it's one small signal of this larger ecosystem of the cannabis industry rebalancing itself. And at the end of the day, I'm a big believer, and I can give you guys some background about my experience in a second here. But I'm a big believer. But the way that you right the ship in these tough times is one of two ways. One is curating a brand that people are delighted to become an advocate of, and then the second one is using data to reduce waste and optimize processes. My background is in predictive modeling, business intelligence, data science. I've been in some flavor of this type of work for about 20 years, been dedicated to the cannabis space for nearly 6 years. And our business at Canold is all about leveraging data to enable cannabis companies across the entire supply chain to use their own data to help solve for waste, optimize processes, and enjoy new clarity into the business that you would never be able to get by just leveraging the reporting that's coming from your front-end software packages like Metric or BioTrack or Dutchie or Trees or whatever you're using for your point of sale. This is just a quick example of some of the pieces of data that are relevant for a given operator, again, across the entire supply chain, that traditionally set and are stored in various disparate systems. So you can see information about labor and yield and time and environmental usage and customers and transactions and money. All these pieces of data are either operators are compelled to track by the regulators, or you have to track in some capacity in order to run your business. And a lot of this data feeds into these standard state tracking systems like Metric or BioTrack. Cannabis is novel in the sense that this is really the only industry that compels licensed operators that are working inside of that industry to basically track everything about their business using the same format. So from a data perspective, this is an amazing opportunity. It doesn't really matter how versed or well-versed you are in data modeling or analytics. One of the hardest parts of just capturing the data is already solved because you're forced to do the data capture to appease the regulators. So it's a very exciting time to be able to use all of this really rich data and give operators insight about how to use the data to effectively grow more weed and sell more weed. And this is just a quick summary of, and everyone here knows it, but if you don't do a good job of tracking the data in meaningful ways, it's not, you're not just shooting yourself in the foot by limiting the amount of data modeling and analytics that you can do, but the regulators are also judging you on how well you're capturing that data. So you can get fines, and you can get your license suspended. You can take a hit on your reputation. The regulators can basically lock up inventory, and these are just a small list of things that happen when you don't do a good job of tracking your information and capturing your data. And our whole narrative here is, when you do at least an okay job of it, enough at least to appease the regulators, you're sitting on this mountain of data that you can use to leverage to optimize. Not going to go into a lot of detail here, but in the data modeling space, we get operators who are so excited to go right into machine learning and artificial intelligence, and trying to go into like really deep analytics very quickly. But oftentimes, what we have to do is have these operators pull their reins back and basically start at the bottom, on the descriptive analytics side. How much weed do you even grow before you can tune a flower room to identify specific recipes for environmentals? So this is the kind of hierarchy of analytics where you start with descriptive, what happened, and then you go to diagnostic, predictive, and then prescriptive at the end, where you can say, how can you control a process to make something specific happen? And then when you're looking at analytics, and my fellow panelists are going to be able to go into some more detail here, but what you're trying to do when you're going to optimize something is minimizing variation. So here's a quick example. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. You can see the grams per foot for two different cultivars here. Bubba Kush pheno number 10 on the left-hand side, and then Grape God pheno number 7 on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you can see a lot of variation going up and down. It's very hard to predict what type of yield you're going to get from Bubba Kush pheno 10 at a given time, because it doesn't happen consistently. Whereas on the right-hand side, you can see something pretty interesting happening. For Grape God pheno 7, between October and June of 21, you have much tighter variation. And then between August 21st and then April of 2022, you also have tight variation. And what that means is it's much easier to predict and project out into the future. So by reducing the amount of variation in a process, you're able to use the signals that are coming from that process to see into the future.
Wow, that's a really interesting graphic. I like that one.
Thanks, Roger.
Great details.
So people ask me, okay, we've got all this data. What is the best way to move forward, right? What are the small steps that we can take to make sure that the data that we're collecting is going to be meaningful for downstream data modeling and analysis? And the best thing that you can do, and it is a story that is old as time, is standardize your naming conventions wherever possible. In the eyes of the computer, in this example here, GG number 4, space pipe space 3.5 grams is not the same as eighth space hyphen space GG4. Both you and I know that this is an eighth of Gorilla Glue. However, when the computer is looking at it, it is not the same. So by collapsing these naming conventions so they're consistent across your entire retail operation or manufacturing operation or cultivation operation or distribution operation, delivery operation, it doesn't really matter. But having consistency with how you're standardizing your naming conventions is going to make all the downstream reporting and analysis so much more relevant.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Is that like the basis behind like UPCs and GS1s and that type of thing from a data bar perspective? What would be the reason why they don't get to a standardization?
So the barcoding functionality is a part of the retail operations that some retailers are obviously all retailers have barcodes on their products, but not all of them are going through these standard naming conventions, such as the ones that you just articulated, Blake. And there is no requirements from the point of sales to standardize those names. So Johnny Bud Tender on a Monday can receive products in and call it GG 3.5 grams, but Sally Bud Tender on Thursday can receive that same product in from the same vendor and call it something different.
Forgive my ignorance here, because the UPC thing has me like completely, I'm from the standard CPG world, so I want everything to just have a UPC code and this to be easy. It's been explained to me like some data companies don't want that. And we'll just leave that out there for a minute. But like, so the bud tender is the one actually inputting it. It's not necessarily coming from the manufacturer / distributor as a specific unit.
So it does, right? And when you receive something, let's say, for example, California or Massachusetts, both of which are metric markets, when those datas come in through a manifest, that information is received as sent into metric. However, metric is not the point of sale in this case. So if you're using a Dutchie point of sale, for example, you have to receive that information into Dutchie as well. When you set up the product, maybe the first bud tender didn't know that you already had that product in the system, and they're creating a new product that is called, it's the same product, but it's called two different things. And that's what starts to create this downward, it's a vicious cycle of creating multiple versions of the same product in the system. So then when you're trying to do analysis on it, and you're maybe looking at like sales velocity, you've got two different velocity calculations for the same product, but that should be collapsed into one.
Thanks.
Question on that. Being from a consumer end, just to tap on the entries, if you're saying that bud tenders are entering this, do they get training on that? Is this something that the buyer or whoever's managing the retail store would be aware that the training needs to also go all the way down to the people who are entering this?
Yeah, Casey, you hit the nail on the head right there. And it's not necessarily the bud tenders that are receiving the product in. Sometimes there's a fulfillment manager or a retail manager that's doing that. But it's all about creating standard operating procedures for the receipt of products into the retail operation. And you can measure how well you're adhering to that, because you will see situations in which the naming conventions don't match a convention that you set up as part of those standard operating procedures. And it's all about holding the people who are involved in the receipt of the inventory into the dispensaries accountable for making sure they're doing a great job. Because if I'm only looking at one version of that Gorilla Glue number 4/8 to influence my procurement decision, and there's actually 2 or 3 different versions, I'm shooting myself in the foot by either underbuying or overbuying for that specific product. And underbuying, you're going to create customers who are unhappy because the products they want to buy are not available. Or overbuying is a situation where you're spending money on products that are sitting in your shelf and not moving. And that is eating up cash and taking up shelf space in the vault.
Yep. Thank you for that.
Okay, moving forward. Thank you, Matt. My name is Roger Tower. I'm a digital marketing consultant across 8 different niches right now. Online koi fish sales, mortgage hedge advisory services, air conditioning services for boats, all kinds of stuff. And you'll find that across the whole grand scheme of things, it's always kind of the same journey that people are going through. It's always a lot of similar metrics that people are tracking. And what I do with clients is help them figure out if they're tracking the right information yet. Because if I come to them and they're not tracking anything, then there's not a lot of analysis that we can do. For example, if you don't have Google Analytics hooked up to your website, I'm not going to be able to go look at the data from the last year to see what your web traffic was like. You already had to be collecting that. So one of the things I'm hoping to inspire people today is to think about what are the data points in your business that you're collecting, whether they're about your inventory or about the amount of sales, revenue, customers, new signups to your email list. Everyone's going to have their own metrics that they want to track. and may realize the metrics they want to track, they weren't already finding a way to do it, or it wasn't standardized correctly. So now you have to go back and do a whole combing of the data to fix it so it all can turn into a nice chart. So I want to just kind of start by showing kind of this journey that everyone goes through, regardless of whether you're a retail company, an online company, anything. You're going to send them through an interest and awareness phase. They're going to try and find you. They're going to care about your reputation. And then you're going to get to that conversion phase and the purchase. I can assume that all the purchase data is probably being tracked right now, because that helps you to predict your revenue. That helps you to predict what you need to buy, how much you can pay people. Probably some reviews are being collected from people. And we've kind of got a funnel of how do I get people to write a review about me. But people may not be tracking how many followers they have, or how many clicks they have from social, or how many Instagram views they had, which probably is okay, because that's not going to really affect your bottom line. So to be able to track along the funnel, you have to have been operating for a little while, understand your market, have taken the time to set up the different tools to be able to track that information. And if you're sitting here thinking, oh, well, I'm probably not tracking properly, then that is the case. There's all kinds of ways you're probably not tracking properly, one step at a time, and just keep focusing on another piece of data point that you're going to want in the future so that you can start now by collecting it. Okay, here's another example I wanted to show. A lot of what I deal with is leads. So a retail shop is kind of similar, but a lot of it's just on site getting someone into your funnel. But let's say you're ease or someone online, then you probably have a more advanced funnel of getting people to sign up for a newsletter list, nurturing them through the funnel, figuring out when they're active. Like, let's say you knew someone shopped at 8 a.m. every day for cannabis, or every Monday they go and re-up their supply, then you would know to market to them differently and send them that email at 7:30 a.m. before they started shopping. So you're only going to learn that by tracking your funnel properly and taking the time to look through it and create insights based on your reporting. And it's not going to happen right away, and it's going to happen with a lot of intention, and it's going to take you years to get to that point. And then part of that is that year over year. You don't know what they do on their birthday until they've gone through 2 birthdays with you. So one of my clients is Cannabis Real Estate Consultants. They work on finding properties that are viable across the US for cannabis licensing. This is an example of the town of Emeryville. On the right, you could see a normal Google Maps type design. And on the left, you see all the data points that we've collected based on the zoning of that town. Each of the colors reflect a different type of license or a sensitive use. And you can zoom in, and it's a digital online display. And, this took 4 years to kind of come up with the full plan and idea as we stumbled through the complications of zoning. So a lot of times your tools are developed out of necessity and out of it not being available to you. This is now one of our key advantages in the market, and only was possible because we learned how to collect the data, how to organize it, how to present it, and how to choose a tool that you could show that data, create membership profiles. There's a lot of forward thinking that gets to being able to present this kind of information. The next step is being able to scale it across the US so they don't have to do as much manual data. Okay. Also, you can have better data organization when you're proactively planning for it. So here is a layout of all the properties across the US that are inside of our system, inside the cannabis listing services. You can filter throughout it. You can click through and look at all the details on the property. But again, this wouldn't be possible if we didn't go through the effort of using enterprise level tool, getting all the data organized and standardized. We went through a long process of figuring out what is the exact name we want to use for a license type, because they have different names across the board. What are the specific languages? Do we want to say a lease, or do we want to say rent? Kind of means the same thing, but we had to make a decision on which one was correct so we could standardize it all together. Okay, and then it's thinking about the future and what you may or may not need. What you see here is one of our forms that collects in a person who is selling a property. This is 1/3 of the form. So it's kind of a long form, and it all collects into our CRM. We thought ahead of time what all the questions were we cared about, and maybe we have a few too many, but they're not all required. So the person can go into as much detail as they want. We're asking for their point of contact and we're asking for a different point of contact. We're standardizing it all into a property address. And then, you only have 3 options: land, building, etc. So, we didn't know exactly how we were going to want to slice and dice our data, but we knew that it really was important for people who are analyzing the deals and the way for us to filter it and help people go through a whole large data set. Another point I want to add is you don't really want long forms if you can help it for your website. You want short forms. So in this scenario, I have a short form that sends their name, email into a second form. So it captures the most important part, which is name, email, company, phone, sends into my database. And then if they have the time and the interest and desire, then they can fill out the second form, which tells me all the more information. So captured my lead, sent it into my CRM, automated an email out to them, all within this form getting filled out. If you're looking for a hot tip, Gravity Forms is one of the best plugins out there if you are a WordPress user. Okay, lastly, we weren't sure where we were going to go with it, but we knew we had the goal of matching buyers and sellers together. So what you're looking at here is an automation that occurs to suggest high matches within our data. So this is a buyer and a seller in Los Angeles. The buyer has a budget of $4 million and the price of the property is $1 million. So it's picked the right amount of data points to then propose that this is a high match probability, and then generates it out in our system so that our sales team can know that this might be a good deal that's happening. This wouldn't be possible if we weren't already collecting the data to then be able to build a tool that queries it and builds a report. So I hope everyone's kind of seeing this theme of decide what you need, start collecting it, build your report, then you can make some automations around it. Before I move on, I was wondering if anyone has any other questions. I wanted to kind of state how a lot of cannabis industry marketing teams are focusing on the visual aspect, looking cool, building out Instagram profiles and follower counts. And there's a lot of different strategies you might be using, but you got to find a way to cut through and find the buyers if you're a cultivator. You have to find the individual people. So there are a lot of like data mining type tasks you might do to identify leads that aren't coming in through your site, like what we're generating. So, really do think outside of the box on your different strategies and what you might be able to do that's different than your competitors, instead of saying, oh, my competitor just made this really cool post on Instagram and I have to now go make a cool post on Instagram because everyone's going to think I'm not as cool. So focus on the data, focus on how you can improve your processes, how you can make better predictions, and think about what data you're already collecting. Hopefully it's more than purchase data. And I'm going to now pass it over to Blake, who is an operator of Keith Brands.
These guys have great data and great charts and great graphs. I have a soapbox. So turn off your mute buttons and let's get to it. From my perspective, I look at data from a standard kind of CPG and retail world, which I recognize can be frowned upon sometimes within this industry. But I think it's time that we put our big girl and big boy pants on and try to establish some retail best practices. So, we look at data from an analytic, to Roger's point of view. What's our website doing? What's our Instagram account doing? All of those things. Unfortunately, though, I think there's a disconnect between what we as a brand are and what the retailers control. The irony, like I've talked about before, of that is that, and what Matt alluded to, really the cannabis industry has some of the best data in the world in any retail category that exists. We know who is doing what, when they're there. We know their eye color, for crying out loud. So I think we need to get to a place where it's more of a collaborative environment. Matt's first slide, tough times ahead. To his point, tough times are already here. That's being felt probably most by the retailers. I get the fact that, retailers are like snowflakes. Even with the same retail footprint. So think about what Dollar General looks like or Whole Foods. Everything's different. And I get that. But I think the standardization, it's time for us to look at that as retail best practices and start following those institutional learnings that we've had. The reason that they're best practices is that they've been proven over time. This is not new. Our products are new, the markets are new, the customers are new, but we have to start taking the data that we have available to us and implementing actionable items that we can then pull levers on so that everyone throughout the value chain is benefited. This is not, I'm sharing secrets or I got secret sauce and I don't want anyone to know. I mean, at the end of the day, we're selling products. Who comes in our stores and why is important to everybody. So while I'm a bit different because I do have SKUs, I do have UPCs, so we've already done that. But I also have probably 70 different SKUs across 14 markets in the United States. So I want to know if a 10 milligram root beer sells better in a particular store, not even a market, but let's get down to store level because stores are different. What sells in the Whole Foods in Ann Arbor is not the same that sells in the Whole Foods in Scottsdale. So we have to start thinking about that in real terms and get down to store specific POS data that we can share within ourselves. I know that some data companies won't like that, but at the end of the day, the data companies, have their own thing that they're trying to sell as well. But really where the rubber meets the road is the products that are being sold in store. So, I mean, I think that that's where we need to get. So soapbox aside, I do think that now we're starting to see different pieces of the retail community come together and say, hey, we have to look at this more broadly, start doing some proof of concepts. I was brought on as really a category person, not necessarily an individual product or an individual brand. When I was at Time Warner, it was all about magazines. When I was doing CBD distribution, it was all about CBD. And I was really brand agnostic. Even at Time Warner, we had client titles that represented 36% of the overall magazine market. So we knew that we had to have the same story. And that story relied on data because at the time we were up against it from other categories trying to get at checkout. There was a time when those refrigerators carrying Coca-Cola and Pepsi didn't exist at checkout. So we had to fight that off. And now I think this reminds me of that, in that we've got to fight off just being a sustainable industry. Like we just have to keep people in the industry, retailers especially. So I think getting to those standards are going to be very helpful and supportive of that. Do it, Roger.
For you. When you consider your brand and where you are in the market, how much of it is looking outside of cannabis, since there are other beverages that people might be considering drinking at the time?
Do you mean non-cannabis beverages?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we look at that quite a bit, mostly because we're soft drinks, right? Like, I mean, that is our core. So we have 5 core soft drinks. We make 70 SKUs, like I said. So there are other things involved, but like we will be in a new market very shortly. And we're baselining kind of what that is based on the soft drinks that are most successful in that market. Ours mimic flavors that are out there. There's a cola. There's something similar to a Dr. Pepper. There's something similar to an orange kind of Shasta. So there's things that we can look at and go, this is what they're drinking. So does that translate over to our SKUs? So yeah, it's looked at, but quite frankly, and this is where kind of the rubber meets the road on the back end, I want to know in 3 months what's successful. I don't want to know in 3 years, and with a little bit of data share that we can get from the retailer, we can get there quickly. Drinks take up space. Refrigerators take up space. So you want to be very cognizant of how to make that space most valuable. And we can do that with some data sharing. It's great to know what they ordered. A lot of brands, I think, make the mistake of just saying, I want to be on shelf. I want to be on shelf. I want to be indoors. What about getting off shelf? And that's where the data can help us like steer path to purchase. starting with how to communicate with them, to your point earlier, through SMS targeting or whatever at 7:30, if they're shopping at 8, I want to know that. I'm down, because then I can have an attributable result. And that's where I think the industry is kind of falling down a little bit. And again, I don't want to be too negative here, but I think it's falling down a little bit because most of the results are projection based. You assume because a store orders more their next re-up cycle that the sales went up, but we don't know that. It's a projection. And so that's where, as a marketer, as a brand, and as a category, I think we got to just be a little bit better.
Blake, I find that it's a little bit of a nice to have too. When you're struggling or your finances are down, thinking about all of this or investing in this for the future is probably not the first thing that you're spending on.
Right. And I think there's so many options, right? There's a ton of different platforms that are being thrust upon operators that were probably real estate investors 3 months ago, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll put a green cross on my building and people will just show up. That's not how that might work the first time, but what about customer retention? And this is what I think a lot of people fall down on, is they think that I can just put something out there and I can control this market, like it's a convenience store. So it's just around, if it's within 0.75 miles and the population's this, I can probably get this much. I think a lot of retailers kind of forget to look at, how do I actually keep the customer? And the other thing is, unfortunately, right now, the cannabis market and the dispensary market is one class of trade. I think that it deserves to be a little bit dissected, and looking at different standardization, names, categories within this dispensary category, right? So it's not, all dispensaries are not the same. Some of them look different, feel different, shop different, have different customers because of what they are. You look at the same footprint of a different, supermarket versus a natural grocer's, those aren't the same. And I think we got to sort of differentiate where we are as an industry too. So, and that goes into data. And look, I think brands would certainly, we would put a lot of resources behind looking at that kind of differentiation between stores to know where we're going to be successful. Where do I sell a 100 milligram root beer versus a kind of 0-calorie sparkling water that's all natural? Those are two different things. We make them both. And so those store specifics are just, unfortunately, just kind of non-existent or non-shared at this point. What's up, Casey?
I have to touch on that because it's something that I harp on, being a mom who consumes. There's a big industry of women in our space right now, but there's so many different type of women in our industry. They're not all moms, and some of them are working moms. Some of them are stay-home moms. It's a different lifestyle for everybody. So to your point, it's very true, understanding and using the data, and having a CRM system to have that retention in place and make it easier, even to find the leaking faucet, especially in today's market when everybody's pretty strapped. So yeah, I think those were all great points.
If you're a plumber, there's a lot of leaky faucets out there. So yes, I think, it's difficult for people that haven't necessarily been trained, or maybe they have, to consider that the customer might not be like them. I consume. I could walk up to a bud tender, ask them, hey, what do you like? The problem is they're going to tell me what they like. They're not going to ask me what I like. And so there's a difference there. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, right? That is the kind of linchpin of where we exist as an industry right now. If you walked up to a jeweler, this is kind of the best analogy that I have. In a jeweler, you're really taken care of, right? You walk into a jewelry store, you're working with somebody, let's call them the bud tender. And you say to them, hey, what do you like? They may like gold bling with diamonds coming out of it. And you may just want something simple and elegant. those two things we have to get away from and really start to I think have some training, and data can do that, right? Like that's where it exists. And those are some of the levers I think that you can pull on.
Yeah, I love that concept. Like you could be wrong. Challenge it, look at the data. Don't assume that because you're so smart that it is correct. Let the data show you.
Yeah.
And also one thing that I would love to talk about for a second is being able to use the data of terpene profiles to be able to search and find a product that fits in with my needs. So instead of saying, hey, I want Jack Herrera, I can say, hey, I want terpinolene and linalool and others. And like, I can search a database, but I'm yet to see any kind of dispensary have that for me yet.
You just made Casey very happy.
Being an Emerald Cup judge, that has been a huge change for our market as far as educating people as far as how to shop. And yeah, just understanding the terpene profile on how it serves everybody's body differently, or somebody that's, suffering from more a medicinal purposes that have cancer. There's certain terpene profiles that we're not going to find all the time, especially in certain areas. So, everything that you guys are saying is super beneficial from both, I think, the consumer side, from the retail side, and, just as a industry and community, to understand how to thrive and grow in today's really scary market.
Yeah, I mean, it's still nascent, right? Like, I mean, we're still new, and so there's this. I've often called it the convergence of education and access. So two things are happening at once. You're getting educated and you have access to these great products. So if there was ever a time to kind of change the narrative from sativa, hybrid, indica, and go to a terpene kind of forward education process, it's now. And I think it's needed and wanted by what I would consider most of the industry. I just don't think a lot of people are really leveraging that as much as they should anyway.
One thing real quick that's super fascinating is all of that testing data, literally at the package level, at the lowest level of the product hierarchy, is all available, locked up inside the state tracking systems. It's major and minor cannabinoids, as well as all the terpene profiles if the operators are deciding to do those profiles during the testing. So with that data, once you extract it from the back ends of these state tracking systems, you can do fascinating things, right? Looking at like the ratio of minor to major, or looking at the spread between minor cannabinoids and total available cannabinoids. All the data, literally for every licensed operator in a given market, for all the lab testing data, is already in the metrics and the BioTracks of the world. You just have to take it out and then transform it in a way that tells like a compelling narrative to give people more education and information about, cannabis goes way beyond, as you said, like the sativas and the indicas and the hybrids of the world. There's so much more to it. And the crazy part is all that data, all that information is already there. You just have to take it out and then transform it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it's got to be differentiation on package. I mean, ultimately, I mean, like I said, I was in the CBD space, and I can remember it was like, you got a 200 milligram tincture, or you got a 500 milligram tincture. And that's all it was. It was just CBD. And then it was like broad spectrum, full spectrum, isolate. And then it turned into, the customer does not know. So they're looking at this quilt of SKUs at an end cap in Wegmans somewhere. And they're going, wait, I don't know what this is for. It really wasn't until sleep was introduced and anxiety was introduced. And you're starting to, it's not the same as terpenes, but I think we can kind of make those types of connections where like, we can now map the terpenes and go, okay, it's prevalent in this, and this is what it tends to do. I don't think we can say this is what it does, but I think, we're not there as a brand, so, but I appreciate the conversation. I think it's warranted. So, to your point, it exists. It's here. Like it's on the COAs. So it might as well be turned into a product differentiator at shelf. Because ultimately, I do think that, like Casey, she got excited when she was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. I think that as we see new customers enter the market, and as cannabis enters new markets, it's going to be what they're looking for too. Like, let's take it another level here. So again,
I could be wrong, but I would assume that soft drinks is a good way to try cannabis.
Yes.
I assume that you might be in the business of converting older grandmothers.
Yes. Yes.
A lot of women that love it. Moms have to be very discreet. And it still, allows us to be in a social setting.
Yep.
I personally love it, especially when I'm on a healthy kick routine and don't want to consume alcohol, but still want to be in that same social setting. I know my mom, who she will not consume cannabis as far as smoking it, not even vaping, but she's okay with a drink or a tincture. And then my father as well, who is a vet, he loves the drinks. And I mean, the pops, like the waters, he's just willing to try all the drinks. He's got his refrigerator and always like a show and tell when we visit him. So it's great. I think the drinks do reach a different audience, but it's also growing on people.
Yeah. And a lot of people are looking for alcohol replacement, right? Like, I mean, this is a real thing. As we move into different markets, it's there's a couple that I cannot tell you what they are, but we'll be in the next couple months. But that is a real thing where people are looking for the alcohol replacement. And so we'll get some Keef to the next Cannabis Chamber in LA there for you, Casey. But or for your mom. But yeah, I mean, it's a good way to position yourself. And we have so many different ones that there is something for everyone, if in fact that's the way you want to go. That being said, I am much more of a category believer than I am like, that's where I want it to be successful. Yes. Do I want Keef to be successful? Absolutely. But I do think that there are products that are non-competitive in the beverage category from us. And as long as they are maintaining quality and they're doing it the right way, then we play nice in the sandbox. Like we quite frankly, we manufacture some competitors in certain markets because we know that they have good quality products. They know how to market to people, and they can do it the right way. So, there's something out there for everyone, if in fact that's the way you want to go.
Before we start wrapping, Matt, did you say you have access to that terpene data and metric through Controlled software?
Yeah, exactly. So any metric operator in the United States, right now, with the exception of Missouri, we can get package level terpene, major, minor cannabinoid data. And not only data from now, but literally every lab test that the given operator has ever pushed through a laboratory. From the inception of their business. And then we can trend it over time. So if you were interested in what does the grape god cultivar look like in terms of potency over time, we can model that out. We can also take a look at different conversion rates. So if you're taking a silver haze and you're transforming it from like a bulk flower to a hash, we can look at what the yield is in terms of what types of cannabinoids you're able to capture in the transformation process. Because we know the parent and child packages from all these different transformations, again, all leveraging BioTrack and metric data. It is fascinating how many types of permutations of data modeling and visualizations that you can do just by leveraging the data that you're forced as an operator to push into metric. And if you're only retail, or if you're only cultivation, or if you're only manufacturing, or in some markets, if you're completely vertically integrated, it doesn't matter what part of the supply chain you're focused on. There's some type of incremental insight that you can get out of the data that you're already capturing. And it's really easy and straightforward to do. And part of our whole mantra is you can't change something and you can't improve something if you can't measure it. And by taking this lens of optimization and waste reduction and doing things more efficiently, you're able to look at a process in more meaningful, interesting ways and use signals that are coming out of these processes to identify where there's opportunity to make those meaningful changes.
Thank you. Love the insight. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine if, you're a licensed retailer why you wouldn't take the advantage of the information and data that you can get, but either, from all different ends, like you said, from seed to sell, I think it would be beneficial on all ends. And so, do we have any questions on anything that our panelists?
Roger mentioned rapping. I just wanted to hear Matthew sing "The Tale as Old as Time." Like you said earlier, I just want to hear. No, just kidding. But I do think it would be cool to like see if anyone has any questions to throw into the chat or whatever. And
let's stay open a few minutes longer and
sure,
see what we got.
And this again will replay back on our YouTube channel, and everybody can get that information as well on our website. So everybody can stay connected there, and we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So.
For me, it's exciting that we're finally getting to this conversation. For so many years, it was let's establish the industry. Let's make sure we have operational businesses. Let's make sure that we're following the regulations and we're surviving next year. Now it's okay. How are we going to do better? What have we done before? And it's finally there for people to look into and make a difference. Yes, the slides will be available. We will send a follow-up email to everyone that registered and also join the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce newsletter, the cannabischamber.com.
Blake, I have a question for you. In the markets that you're in right now, what do you own the licenses for manufacturing? Or are you having co-packing relationships in some of those markets, or is it a combination?
God, I wish we had one business model. That would be so pleasant for me. We don't. We're in 14 markets, Canada and Puerto Rico. So ours is a very different model depending on the market. In some cases, we're producing. In some cases, we own the equipment. In some cases, we're leasing the equipment. In some cases, we're going with a co-packer. It is ridiculous how many business models we have. To just get to our revenue number is quite extraordinary. So it varies. Just candidly, where we can, we would love to own the production because we're good at it. We're very good at making beverages. I say we, I'm not, but we have a team that is. And so, where we can, and we've talked about this before, and this is where I think as an industry, this is where we have to start asking our business partners, regardless of what they're in, take the help. Like I said earlier, I can't grow a tomato. I can't. So anybody that can actually grow cannabis to me is extraordinary. But I can help retailers be better operators. You know what I mean? That's my thing. I've been doing that it's been over 20 years. So therefore, where can you get to a place where you can help your business partners be more successful? And sometimes that's just take the help. It's not that hard. And you'll be better for it at the end. So
we have some questions. The first one, I'd like to state what our upcoming Cannabis Chamber of Commerce events are. And we have an Illinois mixer. We have a virtual event for cannabis and veterans. And then we have an in-person event in San Diego for cannabis and veterans event. That's going to be really special because San Diego in general is very densely populated by veterans. And we're a little bit of a conservative environment. So I'm excited to try and cross that boundary. The second part is, what is the expected impact of new packaging and labeling laws being voted on, such as AB 1207 in California? Pretty sure I know who asked that one, and it's a really important subject right now. And unfortunately, it's going in the wrong direction. And it's unfortunate because California is continuing to add more regulations at a time when we're already struggling. And the short of it is that we're going to have packaging that's less geared towards kids and no flavored items and other things that are potentially going to be a $200 million loss for the industry, which is far more prediction than what they're saying. One of the questions as well is, can you add in terpenes, or can you add in items back into your flavored products or not? Because it says you can only add cannabis flavors, which is a very open-ended statement. that's what I know on it. Thank you, Matt, for helping me understand better. See, another question. Which retail POS platform do you think has the best BI data analytics capabilities for retail owners? Pretty sure we could talk on a whole webinar about that one. Do you guys have any preferred POS platforms? I know Dutchy claims to be the biggest and best.
Yeah, I mean,
touching that one.
Third party.
I have some great insight on that. And for me, the capabilities of taking the data within, so Dutchy has great internal reporting, as does Trees, as does Blaze. There's lots of point of sale platforms out there that are realizing the need for operators to, at varying levels of complexity, take information out. And what the common theme is that it doesn't really matter how good the BI tools that are embedded into the platform are. It really ties back down to the quality of the data going in. And most of these point of sales that I just mentioned, they have the capabilities of extracting the data out. So if you really need to, you can take all the underlying data out of it and push it into your own BI platform. But really, it doesn't help you at all if the data going in isn't ideal. Roger, I'm sure we're going to pass along contact information after the end of this, if is appropriate. And if that's the case, anyone can feel free to reach out to me. And I've got a lot of thoughts and experience with leveraging the internal BI platforms of some of these point of sale systems, and then also taking the data out of the point of sale systems to tell a more compelling narrative. One of the other pieces that is important to understand is that the data that comes inside of the internal BI platforms and also front-end reporting capabilities is only within the realm of the point of sale platform itself. So the point of sale platform is only going to have data about the point of sale. Whereas it's important to overlay, for example, payroll information or invoicing information, which may or may not exist inside of the point of sale. So, for example, you could take payroll data and overlay it with the point of sale transactional data, and you could get, for every bud tender that makes money for the business, what is the cost per sale? So every time Sally is transacting at the point of sale, for every $10 that she makes for the business, how many dollars am I paying her? And that type of insight is impossible to do with inside of the internal reporting of the point of sale, because the payroll data doesn't exist inside of the point of sale. So to do that type of analysis, it would be required that you take the data out of the point of sale, out of the payroll, bring it together in a centralized location to do that type of outside modeling.
Thank you for that. We wanted to jump into some maybe closing statements, and then definitely how we can stay in contact with each one of you guys. Roger, did you want to take the lead on that?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. That was really educational. I know I learned some. We're going to be posting this on YouTube, and we'll also be following up with an email. My business is called Tower Agency. I work with cannabis real estate consultants and WeCan licensing specialists here in Southern California. We are growing nationwide, and we are just killing at finding properties. So if you are having trouble out there and struggling to find a good deal with a landlord, or you just need help negotiating because you found the perfect property, but they don't want to lease to cannabis, then we are your specialists and look forward to hearing from you. If you want to talk about digital marketing strategies and improving your bottom line, you can reach out to me, roger@tower.agency. You can reach out to me at roger@crec.us. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Blake?
I sell cannabis beverages. If you want some, you can reach out to me. If you're in the market, I'll send you to a place. Now, Blake@keithbrands.com. Happy to talk. Always love a good intellectual conversation. This one was great. So anytime. Again, Blake@keithbrands.com.
Thank you. And Matthew?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. This has been awesome. I appreciate everybody's time. My name is Matt Kurtzman. I'm the founder and CEO of Canold. We enable cannabis operators across the whole supply chain to automate analytic workflow and get more out of their data. You can reach me at matt@canold.com. That's CANOLD.com. And I'd be delighted to speak to you about ways in which you can leverage your own data to grow more and sell more.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Hey, Casey, thank you so much for stepping in and doing this on such short notice. You did a great job.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Our good friend Adalia always does a kick-ass job about it. So it's a pleasure to be here with everybody on the team. And again, this is these type of conversations keep me thriving through the day. So it's always appreciated to keep growing and educating myself with people like you guys. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care. See you guys later. Cheers.